In the heart of a bustling city, beneath the towering skyscrapers that seem to scrape the clouds, there is a woman who walks through the world with a quiet resilience that few ever notice. Her name is Layla. On the surface, Layla appears to be an ordinary woman, a young, confident professional with a purpose. She works as a mid-level executive at one of the city's most prestigious banks, but no one at her workplace or in the wider corporate world recognizes her for the quiet power she holds. To the casual observer, Layla is just another cog in the wheel, a woman doing her job, wearing the standard business attire, a pair of glasses, and a hairstyle that speaks of professionalism but not extravagance. But there's something different about Layla. Though she blends in with the corporate culture, she is not quite like everyone else around her. While the others, colleagues and clients alike, move in and out of meetings, pressing forward with their lives, Layla is always the one standing in the background, watching, listening, analyzing. Few people would ever guess that she is the mastermind behind a billion-dollar business empire, a network of organizations and ventures that span multiple industries, creating massive profits each day. Her colleagues, none the wiser, simply view Layla as a hard-working employee, quietly going about her business, never standing out too much. But what they don't see is the network she's built, the alliances she's formed, and the powerful, invisible forces at play in the background. Her role at the bank is merely a cover, a way to maintain her low profile and avoid suspicion. She knows that in this world, especially as a woman of color, you cannot afford to stand out until the time is right. Layla's career began from humble beginnings. She was raised in a modest neighborhood, where the odds were stacked against her. As a young girl, she was often told she wouldn't amount to much. "You're just another face in the crowd," they would say. But Layla had always known better. From a young age, she developed a sharp mind for business, reading books on finance, economics, and entrepreneurship long before most of her peers even understood what those words meant. She used every opportunity to educate herself, determined to break free from the limitations society had imposed on her based on her skin color and background. Her story starts long before she even set foot in the bank's corporate halls. It begins with the struggles of growing up as a young black woman in a city where opportunity seemed scarce, and the road to success felt like it was paved with insurmountable barriers. Yet Layla wasn't deterred. She climbed the ladder in the corporate world, one step at a time, slowly, quietly, but with deliberate purpose. Now, at this stage in her career, Layla holds the perfect balance of anonymity and influence. She has built her empire without the fanfare of publicity or media attention. But despite her success, she is still treated differently by those around her. In fact, it is precisely because of the color of her skin that she is constantly underestimated, her potential obscured by the biases of others. She is often overlooked at meetings, ignored in favor of her white colleagues, and dismissed without a second thought. One particular moment stands out as an example of this treatment: a routine visit to the bank. Layla had made an appointment to meet with her account manager to discuss some minor issues with her business accounts. The encounter seemed like it would be just another ordinary errand, a simple task to be completed with little fanfare. However, what transpired during this visit would mark the beginning of a journey that would change everything. Layla entered the bank and approached the counter with a calm, professional demeanor. As she waited in line, a young white employee at the counter glanced at her and immediately turned his attention to a more affluent-looking white customer who was standing next to her. The man, with his tailored suit and a look of importance, received all the attention, while Layla was left to stand in the background waiting. The employee ignored her for a good few minutes before acknowledging her existence, almost as if she wasn't worth his time. "How can I help you?" he said, finally glancing at her with a dismissive look, as though the moment was more of an inconvenience than a service he was supposed to provide. Layla calmly explained her business, still keeping her composure, but inside she could feel the familiar sting of being treated as less than. She had experienced this before many times in her life. People often assumed that someone like her couldn't possibly have the kind of wealth or influence that others had. But the employee didn't stop there. He continued to look at her with suspicion, as if she were out of place. "Are you sure you have the right account? Maybe you're confused. You might want to double-check your details." The condescending tone was impossible to ignore. Layla didn't flinch. She had learned long ago that the best way to handle situations like this was to remain calm, to not give in to the impulse to react emotionally. She had learned that her silence spoke louder than any words could. This moment, this seemingly innocuous interaction, would set the stage for Layla's eventual rise from the shadows. As she walked out of the bank that day, she knew deep down that this treatment, though irritating, was only the beginning. It was a clear reminder of the barriers she faced daily, and it fueled her resolve. Layla understood that the world saw her as nothing more than a nobody, a woman to be ignored, dismissed, and belittled. But she had a plan. And soon the world would see just how wrong they were. The bank visit was only one of many instances where Layla had been subjected to the invisible weight of prejudice. Her entire life had been shaped by these challenges, from the moment she first walked into the corporate world, to the time she had been passed over for promotions, dismissed during meetings, or judged based on her appearance rather than her capabilities. But Layla had learned to navigate these obstacles with grace, always keeping her eye on the bigger picture. Her story is not unique. There are countless others like Layla, people of color who face systemic barriers simply because of their race. In the corporate world, Black individuals, especially women, often find themselves at a disadvantage, with their talents overshadowed by the biases of those in power. And yet, in the face of this adversity, Layla was determined to succeed. She knew that if she could rise above the noise, stay focused, and leverage her hidden strengths, she could turn the tide in her favor. The problem that Layla faces is one that resonates with many. It's not just about her struggle to succeed in a system designed to hold her back. It's about the deeper issue of systemic inequality that exists in the world. It's about being treated as less than, being told in subtle and not so subtle ways that you are not good enough because of your skin color, your background, your gender. For Layla, this wasn't just a matter of personal experience, it was a matter of principle. She was determined to prove that she was more than what the world expected her to be. Her story is not just about fighting for success in business, but about fighting for dignity, for respect, and for a chance to show that anyone, no matter where they come from or what they look like, can achieve greatness if they have the drive and the determination to do so. As Layla navigated her career, the tension around her built steadily. The more she succeeded behind the scenes, the more the world around her remained oblivious to her true potential. And while this obscurity allowed her to keep her plans hidden, it also created an internal conflict. She wasn't just fighting against external biases. She was fighting against a system that made her feel small, insignificant, despite her immense capabilities. But Layla wasn't one to shrink from challenge. She had built her empire with quiet precision, out of sight, while the world treated her as an afterthought. The tension would come to a head when the world finally discovered the truth about Layla, and the secret she had kept hidden for so long would be revealed. The time for silence was almost over. Soon, the world would realize that they had underestimated her in the most profound way. And when that moment came, it would be nothing short of revolutionary. This section delves deeper into the social issues that Layla faces. The prejudices she encounters are not merely the actions of a few misguided individuals. They are reflective of a larger, systemic issue. Layla's experiences are a microcosm of the struggles that people of color face every day in a world that often sees them as less than. As the narrative unfolds, the story highlights the ways in which racial injustice manifests in subtle, yet insidious ways. These daily microaggressions and overt prejudices are not only barriers to success but are deeply personal affronts to one's sense of worth. Layla knows this all too well. But she has also learned that these moments, these small indignities, will be the fuel for her eventual rise. Layla's life, although a facade of calm and professionalism, is beginning to fracture under the weight of the daily prejudices she faces. While she quietly rises through the ranks, her efforts to maintain a low profile are becoming increasingly difficult to sustain. The incidents that once seemed like isolated, small occurrences are now stacking up, each more damaging than the last. At work, Layla is continuously passed over for promotions despite her clear qualifications and exemplary performance. Colleagues with less experience and fewer skills, often white and male, receive the recognition and opportunities she has worked tirelessly for. The moment when Layla is passed over for a high-profile project, one she had been preparing for, is a turning point. She had been silently hoping for her time to come, but when the offer is given to a less qualified colleague, it ignites something deep within her. Despite her growing frustration, Layla remains composed. She knows that public outbursts would only reinforce the stereotype that she's too emotional, a common bias people like her often face. Instead, she takes the high road, focusing on her work, working harder than ever, building her network and plotting her next steps. But the bank isn't the only place where Layla experiences racial prejudice. Outside of work, she faces the same microaggressions, people questioning her abilities, doubting her success, or assuming she's less capable than others because of her race. One example occurs when Layla attempts to rent a high-end apartment in the city. She fills out the application, attends a viewing, and is immediately dismissed by the leasing agent, who informs her that the property is no longer available, despite the fact that it had only just been listed as available. Layla is keenly aware that her skin color was the unspoken reason for this sudden unavailability. This string of humiliations begins to build an emotional reservoir of anger, but Layla channels her frustration into quiet resolve. She knows that this is the nature of the system she's trying to break into, a system that's built to keep people like her out. Yet, she's determined to prove that even the most rigid walls can be broken. As the weeks go by, the tension intensifies. Layla starts keeping detailed notes of her interactions, tracking instances of discrimination, microaggressions, and wrongful behavior. She doesn't yet know how she will use this information, but it is clear to her that the time to take action is coming. Each day brings her closer to the moment when her patience will run out. At this stage, Layla begins to realize that she's no longer merely fighting against the systemic forces of prejudice and discrimination. She is also up against the social structure that continues to prop up those who oppress her. She isn't just dealing with individual people who harbor prejudices, she is now confronting an entire system designed to keep her at the bottom. The more she observes, the more she notices just how pervasive this structure is. It's not just about her, it's about the larger societal forces at play that benefit from her and others like her remaining invisible. This realization hits her hardest during a high-profile meeting with the bank's senior executives. Layla has worked tirelessly on a proposal for a new financial initiative that she believes could make the bank millions. But when she presents her idea, it is met with apathy and cold indifference from the executives in the room. The white men in charge dismiss her proposal without even a second glance, instead choosing to entertain a less innovative, more traditional proposal presented by a male colleague. The disconnect is obvious. Layla watches as her colleague, with less experience and a far more conventional approach, receives praise for his visionary ideas, while her own bold, forward-thinking proposal is outright ignored. Her frustration grows to a breaking point, but she holds her composure. This isn't the time to make a scene. Layla knows that she needs to work smarter, not harder, if she's going to break through. One of the pivotal moments during this period comes when Layla starts receiving information from unexpected sources. A former coworker who had left the bank years ago reaches out to her. He was a whistleblower who had seen firsthand how the bank had long been engaging in unethical practices, primarily aimed at avoiding diversity and fairness initiatives. Layla listens carefully as he outlines the secretive systems in place, how the bank had systematically underpaid women and people of color, how executives manipulated the numbers to make it appear that they were more diverse than they actually were, and how they consistently promoted less qualified individuals based on race and gender. It's clear now. Layla isn't just facing personal bias, she's fighting an entire network of corruption and racial injustice. She knows that it's time for her to stop playing by the rules. If she wants to make the kind of change she believes in, she'll need to become more than just a cog in the wheel. She needs to take back control, not just of her career but of her destiny. As the conflict intensifies, Layla's resilience is tested more than ever. She begins to find strength not just in her actions, but in her ability to remain composed under pressure. While others might have broken under the weight of constant discrimination, Layla becomes more focused, more determined, and more strategic. She begins to realize that if she is to make any headway in this male-dominated, racially biased world, she must embrace her power in ways she never imagined before. In this section, Layla's journey of self-discovery unfolds. She reflects on the lessons she learned as a child, about resilience and the power of knowledge. She starts reading books about business moguls, studying their rise to power. She begins to realize that the very qualities that people have always dismissed in her, her calm, her quiet strength, her ability to think and act strategically, are exactly the tools she needs to succeed. Her newfound resolve leads her to reach out to key figures in her industry, people who she knows are also dissatisfied with the status quo. She starts building a coalition of like-minded individuals who are committed to pushing back against the systems that hold them back. Slowly, she assembles a team of allies. Some of them are people of color like herself, and others are allies who understand the need for change. Layla doesn't yet reveal her full potential to them, but they begin to see a different side of her. A side that is not willing to accept the status quo, a side that is capable of sparking real change. Her reputation begins to shift and people start to take notice. Layla is no longer just a quiet worker bee, she is a force to be reckoned with. This is also the time when Layla begins to take the first steps toward making her hidden empire known. Her small, quiet investments in real estate, technology, and other sectors begin to bear fruit. She realizes that she has the financial resources to challenge the very system that has been oppressing her, and she's ready to use it. As Layla continues to strategize and gather her resources, there's a growing sense of anticipation that something big is about to happen. She's working behind the scenes, laying the groundwork for a powerful change, but the world has yet to catch on. Her rise has been slow, deliberate, and calculated, but every moment has been leading her to this crucial point. The bank continues to treat her as just another employee, but she knows that her time is coming. She is no longer content to sit in the background. Layla begins to make bolder moves, making connections, leveraging her hidden resources, and slowly planting the seeds for a dramatic shift in the corporate landscape. The tension grows with each step she takes, and the viewer can feel that something monumental is on the horizon. Layla's transformation is inevitable, but the exact moment when she will reveal her power to the world is still uncertain. But the wait won't be long. Soon Layla will make her move. And when she does, the world will never look at her the same way again. As the narrative reaches its climax, Layla's journey takes a dramatic turn. After months of meticulous planning, building alliances, and amassing resources, she is finally ready to confront the system that has long held her back. It's time to reveal who she truly is, to expose the facade that has allowed her to operate in the shadows while others underestimated her. The moment of truth arrives during a crucial board meeting at the bank. The executives have gathered, as usual, to discuss the future of the institution. Layla has been invited to present a proposal, one that she believes will revolutionize the financial industry and drive massive profits. But what they don't know is that this proposal is not just about business. It's about dismantling the very systems that have oppressed her and others like her for so long. As she steps into the room, the executives immediately assume she is there to pitch another minor business deal, nothing more than routine. But Layla has prepared something far more disruptive. With the calm confidence that has defined her throughout her career, she begins to speak. She doesn't just present her proposal, she lays out the entire history of the bank's discriminatory practices, the unfair treatment she has personally endured, and the impact that systemic bias has had on the success and well-being of those excluded from the system. For the first time, Layla's voice, once quiet and subdued, rings out with clarity and strength. Her words carry the weight of not just personal experience but the collective struggle of so many who have been mistreated by the corporate world. As she speaks, the room falls silent. The executives, who had once dismissed her as a mere employee, now find themselves confronted with an undeniable truth. But Layla doesn't stop there. She reveals her true identity, the owner of a vast business empire that has quietly reshaped entire industries. She has built a network of companies worth millions, and the wealth she's amassed has given her the power to disrupt the very institution that has ignored her for so long. The bombshell lands with force. None of her colleagues or the executives had any idea who she truly was. Layla's hidden empire, built through strategic investments, partnerships, and business acumen, becomes the focal point of her revelation. The wealth and influence that she has accumulated over the years now stand in stark contrast to the way she was treated within the walls of the bank. This is the moment when the world begins to see Layla not as the subordinate employee, but as the powerful business mogul she has always been. The room erupts into chaos as the truth sinks in. The executives, who had once ignored her talents and dismissed her as just another employee, now realize that they have been underestimating her all along. The power dynamics in the room shift instantly. They now see her not just as an employee but as a peer, someone whose influence is far greater than they could have ever imagined. This moment of revelation is not just about Layla exposing her hidden empire. It is about her reclaiming the dignity and respect she has long been denied. The executives and colleagues who had once belittled her must now reckon with the fact that they were blind to her true capabilities. This is her moment of triumph, a victory not just over them, but over the system that has kept so many like her down for generations. The aftermath of Layla's revelation is swift and dramatic. The shockwaves of her bold move reverberate throughout the bank and the entire financial industry. Layla's actions bring about a series of immediate changes within the organization, changes that no one, least of all the executives who had previously underestimated her, could have foreseen. In the days that follow, Layla's proposal, which had once been ignored, is suddenly at the forefront of the bank's future. The executives scramble to salvage their reputations, and many of them are forced to step down. The very system that had oppressed Layla and others like her begins to dismantle itself from within. The board is shaken, but they know that Layla is not someone they can afford to ignore. Her empire is too powerful and her influence too vast. Layla's swift and decisive actions lead to the immediate firing of several key executives who had been responsible for perpetuating the systemic bias within the organization. The CEO, who had once turned a blind eye to the bank's discriminatory practices, is forced to resign. Layla takes over the bank's diversity and inclusion initiatives, bringing in people who reflect the true diversity of the world and not just the small elite group that had held the reins for so long. In addition to these major changes at the bank, Layla uses her newfound influence to advocate for broader social change. She starts pushing for policies that support equal pay, diversity in hiring, and ethical business practices across the corporate world. Her efforts lead to the formation of a new coalition of companies, investors, and social activists committed to breaking down the barriers that have kept people of color, particularly women, from accessing power in the business world. Layla's actions become a beacon of hope for those who have been marginalized and oppressed. Her story becomes a symbol of empowerment, a reminder that even in the face of systemic injustice, individuals have the power to create change. She uses her platform to mentor others, helping young women and people of color find their voices and rise to positions of power in industries where they have long been excluded. As Layla's influence grows, the very foundation of the corporate world begins to shift. The story of her rise from a seemingly invisible employee to one of the most influential figures in the business world becomes a source of inspiration for people everywhere. Her journey demonstrates that power, when used wisely, can not only bring success to the individual, but can also bring justice and fairness to the larger society. The immediate consequences of Layla's actions are felt across the board. The executives who had once mocked her, assuming she would always remain invisible, now find themselves facing the very same biases and injustices they once perpetuated. Some of them are fired, others resign, and a few are publicly humiliated as their wrongdoings come to light. For Layla, the resolution is sweet, but it's not about revenge. It's about justice, about making sure that the systems that have long favored the powerful are dismantled. Her actions bring about the instant karma that the corporate world had long needed, a lesson that no one can ignore. The very people who once looked down on her are now facing the consequences of their actions. Their careers are ruined, their reputations tarnished, and their positions of power are taken away. This swift retribution is a moment of catharsis, both for Layla and for the audience. The wrongs that were done to her and to so many others are righted, and the balance of power begins to shift. But Layla does not revel in the downfall of others. Instead, she uses this moment to reinforce her commitment to justice and fairness. Her actions not only bring about the downfall of corrupt executives, but they also spark a larger conversation about the role of power, privilege, and race in the corporate world. Layla becomes a leader in this movement, using her position to advocate for policies and practices that ensure that no one will ever have to experience the same discrimination and oppression she once faced. Layla's story is ultimately one of empowerment, a tale of overcoming adversity, rising against the odds, and using one's inner strength to create lasting change. She proves that no matter where you start or how much the world tries to hold you back, you have the power to change your own narrative. Her journey is a reminder that empowerment comes from within, and that the power to fight for justice and equality is not reserved for the privileged few. It is something that anyone, no matter their background or circumstances, can claim if they are willing to stand up and fight for it. In the final scenes of the story, Layla stands before a group of young women and people of color, sharing her story and encouraging them to believe in their own power. She tells them that they, too, can achieve greatness, that they can overcome the obstacles placed in their way, and that they can create the world they want to live in. The story ends with Layla not only reclaiming her power, but also empowering others to do the same. Her legacy is one of justice, equality, and a reminder that one person can make a world of difference. After the corporate upheaval and the subsequent dismantling of the old power structures, Layla takes time to reflect on everything that has happened. Her transformation is complete, and she is no longer the woman who quietly hid behind a facade of corporate anonymity. She has become the face of a movement, a force for change in a world that sorely needed it. This section delves deeper into Layla's personal growth and how she processes the events that led to her success. Initially, Layla's actions were driven by a need for recognition, justice, and self-respect. But as her power grows, so does her understanding of her position in society. She begins to see that her fight is not just about achieving personal victory, but about making space for others who have been similarly oppressed. Her journey has become a beacon for those who are invisible in the corporate world, showing them that they, too, can rise above the systemic barriers in place. Layla's newfound position allows her to use her influence to mentor young, aspiring business leaders, especially women of color, who may have experienced the same struggles she once did. She begins to host seminars, panel discussions, and leadership programs, where she shares her experiences and teaches others how to navigate the corporate landscape with the same determination and savvy she used. Her story is not just a tale of personal triumph but a blueprint for others to follow. She also begins to address the social issues that affect her on a larger scale, focusing on community building and ensuring that future generations don't have to endure the same type of discrimination. Layla invests in businesses owned by women and minorities, offering mentorship, capital, and opportunities for those who have traditionally been excluded from the business world. At the same time, she still keeps a part of her original vision, the quiet resilience she developed in her earlier years. She stays grounded, remembering the people who helped her along the way, and the challenges she overcame to achieve success. As she sits in her now modernized office, overlooking the city that once rejected her, Layla reflects on how far she has come. But she also knows that her journey is far from over. Her rise has inspired not just a handful of people but a whole new generation of leaders who now see her not as a symbol of overcoming individual obstacles but as a role model who proves that systemic change is possible. Her story is about courage, resilience, and the realization that change doesn't come from waiting for it to happen. It happens when you take action. The closing moments of this section show Layla walking through a building filled with young entrepreneurs, diverse faces from every corner of society. She stops and takes a moment to watch them, proud of what they are doing, knowing that the future is in good hands. Her legacy, she realizes, is not in the wealth she has accumulated or the power she now wields, but in the future leaders she's helped create. Layla's actions reverberate across industries, but their long-term effects are even more profound than the immediate changes within her company. Her story is one that the media picks up quickly, and it becomes a symbol of both personal achievement and the power of social justice. The corporate world, which had long been defined by exclusivity and entrenched privilege, begins to change as more companies embrace the diversity and inclusion strategies that Layla championed. Her influence spreads across borders, and soon corporations around the world begin implementing the reforms she pioneered. Reforms that focus on leveling the playing field, ensuring equal opportunities for people of all backgrounds, and breaking down the systems of bias and exclusion that have held back talented individuals for decades. Layla's name is now synonymous with corporate responsibility, equality, and transformation. She is invited to speak at global summits on leadership and inclusion, where she shares her knowledge and ideas with some of the most powerful people in the world. As she addresses large crowds of business leaders, she emphasizes that true power does not lie in dominance or control, but in the ability to lift others up, to empower those who have been marginalized, and to create opportunities for all. Despite all her achievements, Layla remains grounded. She knows that the work is far from finished. While she has transformed her own life and career, the corporate world is still rife with inequality. There is still much to be done to ensure that the next generation doesn't have to fight the same battles she did. Her legacy will be judged not just on the changes she has made, but on the extent to which those changes endure and continue to grow. The ripple effect of Layla's actions is profound. Not only does she continue to break new ground in the corporate world, but she also influences a broader societal shift toward greater inclusivity, equality, and fairness. Her story serves as a stark reminder that one person, armed with the right tools, can change an entire system. As Layla looks back on the years of struggle, triumph, and transformation, she feels an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The anger she once carried, the desire for retribution, has given way to a quiet, enduring peace. She has found purpose not in the destruction of others, but in the creation of a better, more equitable future. This section serves as a moment of emotional closure, where Layla takes stock of all she has accomplished. Layla reflects on the lessons she's learned along the way, about the importance of persistence, the strength of community, and the power of quiet leadership. She remembers her early days, how she had to fight for every inch, how she had to keep proving her worth to a world that refused to see her for what she truly was. But now, as she watches the world around her change, she realizes that all those small moments of adversity were necessary for her growth. Every barrier she faced helped her build the inner strength she needed to achieve her goals. As she stands in her office overlooking the city, Layla smiles. The path she once walked, filled with injustice, bias, and discrimination, has transformed into one of empowerment, leadership, and progress. She has become the person she always knew she could be: a leader, a mentor, and a trailblazer for a future that is more inclusive and just. The story concludes with Layla, no longer just a figure in the corporate world, but a symbol of what is possible when individuals are determined to stand up against injustice and fight for the change they want to see. She has rewritten her own story, and in doing so has helped rewrite the stories of countless others who will now follow in her footsteps.